There's no video. Oh, there we go. Welcome in, guys, and welcome back to Experience. Having some, I don't know what's going on, some just lagginess. So apologize about that. This week we are covering the running back rankings. Last week we covered the quarterback rankings and just basically where we ranked them at, why we ranked there. We're basically going to do the same thing for the running backs this week. So we'll cover all 32, kind of also add our bold to where we're going to make our bold prediction of how the season will go. So we're excited for that. And yeah, so we can get started. But before we get started, obviously, we like to shout out our guys at Sports Lounge Media for making this happen and all the things that they do on their end as well. Go check them out, guys, on their end, and follow them. Subscribe on YouTube and all the platforms that you're able to. It's completely free. It's just a click of a button. So I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We will go over the chat at the end so that way we can get through this. So I don't want anybody to feel like I'm ignoring them, but it's just not something we have pulled up. So we'll go ahead and get started. So again, these first five guys, league winners. Okay. First guy really, I think, is self-explanatory. Bijan Robinson. It's honestly a strong case for him, not just to be running back, but the first overall pick in most formats. Okay. As much players like Gibbs and CMC are capable of taking that running back themselves, I think that Robinson just had enough chance for him, as those players. Huge workload, elite efficiency, pass catching ability, the uncommon durability that gives him the highest floor of the combination of the highest floor and the lowest ceiling, right? They shipped Tyler Algier off to Arizona, or he shipped himself, one of the two. I think that they upgraded the offensive line at the end of this year. So, Robinson's workload is locked in, around a league leading level as it was last year. And basically the formula goes, guys, with the way that volume goes, the explosive production, averaging a 4.9 yards per catch for his career. I think that new coach Kevin Stefanski will probably want to use that backup Brian Robinson. Try not to get those guys confused in fantasy, by the way. But I think he's quickly going to prove a downgrade from Tyler Algier. I was a big Tyler fan. I like Tyler Algier. I think that he ran the ball 143 times last year. Touchdowns. So he took some of that fantasy production away from Robinson, and this year I'm not so sure that that's going to happen. So quick, simply put, I think that Brian Robinson or Bijan Robinson, that's where you got to be careful. Bijan will be at the top of most redraft formats as the number one overall pick. Number two, Gibbs. Gibbs. Again, I think this is a 1A, 1B. I really think the top four that I'm going to talk about today have a real good shot at running back one. Gibbs with at least 5 yards per carry in each of his 3 NFL seasons. That's pretty strong. I think he has a strong case for the most explosive from scrimmage threat in the league. Last year, he brought in, I think, a little bit of a decline, but I think it was more of Detroit's offense as a whole that faced a decline. And as his, rushing suffered down the stretch, eventually he did finish with, again, carry and 18 touchdowns. 5 of those were receiving with 1,800 yards from scrimmage. So, I think that he's proved that he carries the Detroit offense rather than, the other way around of them carrying him. I just think that, David Montgomery ate into a lot of that, and as a whole just took a hit. David Montgomery got shipped off to Houston and had so far only replaced him with Isaiah Pacheco, which we will talk about a little bit later, who signed a guaranteed contract for just 1 year. So, as much as the Lions would like to avoid overworking Gibbs, I just think that their present depth chart kind of hit at the huge snap counts that Gibbs is going to receive. It's also notable that the Detroit offensive line is going through somewhat of a transition, for the second offseason in a row. This time due to the subtraction of Taylor Decker. They're Penei Sewell to left tackle. They drafted the rookie Blake Miller out of Clemson to take that spot. There's just no guarantee that Detroit's offensive line improves. But I think, again, with Gibbs' ability, his talent, the workload, no Montgomery, and he's, again, one of the best pass-catching running backs in the league. I think it just spells for good times in fantasy. So number 3, and a lot of people are giving me hate for this one because it's a bad offense, but hear me out, okay? I do have number 3 as Devon Achane, and it's, again, more of so with the volume, right? I think he's established himself as one of the best fantasy running backs in the league. Last year finished top 5 at number 5. Even though the small were difficult to withstand 238 carries that he claimed last season, but I think there's plenty of fantasy upside to be found in the as we know, the huge breakaway runs that he has, and the standout pass catching production. Okay, we've talked about Baez, talked about Gibbs. I think Achane is the best passing running back in fantasy in the league, period. I see the way he operates. I watch the games, I watch the footage, and in fantasy he produces. So there's not really much of an argument. But it's easy to look past Achane's modest volume production, given his career average of 5.6 yards per carry. He does have 12 carries of 4 yards, talking about that, breakaway speed that he has. They did lose Coach Mike McDaniel. Okay, a lot of people are saying that's going to be huge. I do think that it is going to play a part. I don't necessarily, especially this last year, it didn't necessarily seem like Mike McDaniel was all the way bought in with what was transferred to the franchise. So we'll do with that. But I think that back Malik Willis, I think they're going to look at Achane to kind of lean on. Tua was not good, but he did spam a lot of targets to Achane in situations where Malik Willis might be inclined to run or look downfield. So it might change up a little bit. It might look a little different. But if Achane's reception count were to drop, there's no guarantee. Again, in a bad offense, I understand. There's no guarantee that his rushing side will pick up the slack of that. I do 12 touchdowns last year, 8 receptions, or 8 receiving while for the rebuilding teams. I think they're still rebuilding, but their wide receiver room, this may be just something they're going to have to beat into Malik Willis. Maybe something that they say, hey, Achane's best player. This is what he does well. He catches the ball out of the backfield and he makes stuff happen. So we're going to implement the plan instead of taking off for a first down. It just makes it different for both Achane and Malik Willis. So But I do have Chan finish in top 3. Again, workload is a big ordeal in fantasy. You give them more opportunities to produce, they can produce more. Number four, I still do have CMC at the top of the list. Okay. Number 1 overall running back last year, guys. Okay. Last year, season with an unspecified Achilles tendon issue, somehow shook it off. Evaded the worst fears of fantasy investors, of his fantasy investors at that. McCaffrey not only started all year for San Francisco, he was almost certainly overworked as the scrambled to fix the production shortages caused by injuries to other skill position players. Okay, obviously, there was a lot of injuries. We know the 49ers are known for that. But McCaffrey was not one of them last year, guys. He played in every game, logged 927 snaps, which was his most since 2019 and the third most of his career. With McCaffrey turning 30 in June, having plenty of injuries in the past, they might want to lessen his workload. He did have 311 carries, 102 receptions. They do have Jordan James. They do have, some options back there. But the question is do they have that luxury of bringing back CMC a little bit? Not if they want to win ball games, in my opinion. It's not clear that really either, even if CMC goes down, that this Jordan James or Kalon Black that they drafted in the 3rd round would be able to step in. It's not clear even if Isaiah Grendo is even going to have a roster spot at the end of the beginning of the year. So it wouldn't be shocking if the 49ers overworked CMC again, which would again be the delight to us fantasy investors. So I do have him as a top 4 finish. Again, just because of the workload that is not warranted for his health, but is definitely warranted for the workload in fantasy, right? Number 5, we got James Cook, Buffalo. I am high on James Cook. I think a top 5 finish is definitely profound. Number 6 last year, not too far off. Cook was one of the best ADP values, average draft position last year. Actually, the last of the last 2 years. And I think while the price might be higher than any time it's ever been going into 2026, I don't think that there's any obvious reason why Cook should fall off at any time. The formula between James Cook, Josh Allen, it's got an elite offensive line. When you look at it, they have the new OC turned head coach Brady, which was perfected last year. Cook averaged last year with Brady 5.2 yards per carry over 309 carries. So he was up there with CMC average. 102 of those carries were more than his previous career high. So definitely more of a workload there than he's used to. Cause of concern for the workload? For me, no. Cook doesn't take many direct hits if you watch. And it has an unprecedented amount of really cover due to Allen and his elite offensive line. So as long as Allen is healthy, as the Bills' offensive line, the Bills will get into scoring range regularly, right? And as long as, again, those things remain dominant, I think there's ample space for Cook to exploit all that. Does Allen take away a little bit from Cook in the rushing department? Yes, with the tush pushes, the whatever you want to call them. I do agree. However, I do think the workload that James Cook has during the regular season and the production that he's put on paper, the consistency unmatched. So Next guy we're going to talk about, number Jonathon Taylor. I have Jonathon Taylor, I think, higher than most. I think somebody I seen had him kind of in the late, like 8 or 9. In my opinion, I think the arrival of Daniel Jones proved to be a godsend for him. I think with the improved, which is crazy to say, the improved quarterback play, which was a contrast to what Anthony Richardson was providing, right? I think that though Taylor has always been highly successful for the Colts, that was often the case in spite of the offense around him. Okay, let me explain. If Taylor were ever truly empowered by a surrounding offense, I think that he could enjoy that glow up that CMC or Barkley got after leaving their original NFL teams. Unfortunately for Taylor and for the Colts, Daniel Jones was made less effective mid-season with his fibula fracture, and then suffered the Achilles tendon, which ended his season December 7th. So great as Taylor's final numbers were, 20 touchdowns, 18 of those were rushing, and a career high in receiving stats. The season was just still largely a tale of before and after Jones's injuries. Like, they were just night and day differences. Taylor averaged an ordinary 12.9 points per week after a week 11 bye, and then he lost half of his production compared to which was a league high 27 points per game through the first 10 games of that season. He was on pace for a 1,900-yard rushing season at one point, and instead he finished with just below 16 at 1,585. So, I think that people fail to realize how big Daniel Jones really not necessarily alleviated the workload. I don't want to say that. I want to say took on more, took some off of his plate, if you will, right? I mean, not everything's on you at this point. You have a mobile quarterback. You have an IQ, but you upgraded a quarterback from Anthony Richardson to Daniel Jones. That does something for your offense. Now, what does it mean with Daniel Pittman gone? I don't necessarily think that changed. Alec Pierce stepped to that role. You still have Josh Downs. You have Tyler Warren, who they drafted last year. I think it all could come to a head this year. So, number 7, and I'm sure everybody in the chat's like, he hasn't even said Saquon yet. This is crazy. No, I do. I have Saquon at number 7. I think it's going to be a different offense this year. I've been watching OTA, watching from training camps, just the little drills that we're out there running. They're out there at rookie OTAs while they're invested in the team. I just kind of like what I see. I'm kind of like what I see in the offense. I think it's going to help Jalen Hurts and both him and Barkley. So, I honestly, in retrospect, right, Barkley's, we'll call it magical first season in Philadelphia. I don't think should be portrayed with the struggles that followed in last year's. But in hindsight, it's safe to say that everything was lined up perfectly for Barkley, or in a way that might be difficult to recapture. And we understand that, right? We don't have the offensive line. We're getting older at that position, but we're trying to replace those, get younger, and kind of like what we're doing. So he should keep playing at an elite level for his own part. But the broader state of the Philadelphia offense as a whole, it has to be proven. I can sit here and say that, oh, it looks good on paper, and coach is saying that we're going to do pre-motion offense, and we're going to run 2 tight end sets, and I can hear it all day, but I got to see it. I got to see it work. I have to see it work for Jalen Hurts, and I have to see it work for Barkley. So a lot of it is unseen, or remains to be seen. you have the looming divorce between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, right? I think will force a more of a shift, but the last year the Eagles' offensive line didn't live up to its dominant standard, right? Even so, I think that these concerns highlight the fact that while everything Barkley and the Eagles in 2024, things fell apart in 2025 in a way that felt like the worst case non-injury scenario for the Barkley fantasy investors. If 1,413 yards and 9 touchdowns from scrimmage is your worst case, things probably aren't so bad in the fantasy world. One way Barkley's luck could turn for the better would be regarding the offensive line injuries. Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, if they become healthy, that definitely bodes well, right? The Eagles definitely missed reps and had guys playing hurt. Again, a left guard. We talked about Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, right tackle. Lane Johnson was out. Again, and then there's new hope and the coordinator of Sean Mannion can hopefully help Nick Sirianni get the offense back on track. I think incorporating Mekhi Lemon, Eli Stowers, regardless of how things shake out for Philadelphia's offense in general, right? Let's get this straight. Barkley will continue to rank among the running back leaps and carries per game. Okay, we're an organization that understands and knows his level, right? We understand that we have Barkley in the backfield. His workload's not going to go anywhere. I do see us maybe utilizing a little bit of Tank Bigsby a little bit more, hopefully. I think Will Shipley's kind of if emergency situation, but I think you could see a little bit of Tank Bigsby next year. Will be interesting to see how that works out. So Saquon at 7, 8. At Chase Brown for the Bengals. Okay. Honestly, I'm a Chase Brown owner, so listen very closely. What began as a nightmare season for 2025 Chase Brown owners eventually turned out for the better. To the point that by the end of the year, the nightmare really had been forgotten. He finishes running back 7, but given how poorly it went for Brown through the first 6 weeks, I don't think anyone could have guessed what this would remaining 11 games would have transpired the way they did. Okay, Brown's year-end numbers in 2025 were similar to those in 2024, so 2 years in a row. This was after Joe Burrow returned with a toe injury too. So Joe Burrow being a quarterback is a big thing for Chase Brown as well. But going into 2026, there's reason to think that Brown's production will be more, hopefully keeping all the highs while removing some of the lows, or in my opinion, or hopefully at least spacing them out more charitably. Gotta laugh at that one. But the Bengals didn't really add any running backs in the offseason, right? They didn't add any competition. I think the veteran running back P. Ryan is about as the non-threatening as about as the veteran backups get for him. So barring injury, I think that he gets the goal line touches. He piles up the catches. Great in PPR leagues. I think, again, Burrow stays healthy. Maybe a wide receiver goes down. He goes up and whatever that looks like. I think with his workload, the pass catching ability, he could be a top 8 running back. Number 9, Kenneth Walker. Left Seattle, was a Super Bowl MVP, right? Went to Kansas City. I think this is huge for finished last year's running back 22. Okay, and let me explain this. Seattle's Super Bowl victory might not have happened entirely, if not for Walker really carrying them through the playoffs, in my opinion. A stretch that offered a glimpse of what really Walker might be capable of if given a feature back role. Zach Charbonnet's ACL tear cleared the field for really Walker to take over, and 417 yards from scrimmage. 104 of that was receiving, with 4 rushing touchdowns in just 3 playoff games. Now Walker brings that to Kansas City to take up what should be a much bigger season role than what he had with Seattle. Walker was already productive for the Seahawks, and the workload split wouldn't have been such a big deal if Charbonnet hadn't really poached so much short yardage situations, especially at the goal line. In Kansas City, there's a little doubt that Walker will both claim a higher share of backfield usage in general and specifically in scoring situations. 3-year deal with the Chiefs really just dictates as much. Even before factoring in the weak veteran depth chart behind him, I know they had the young kid Brashard Smith, probably going to be the running back too, but there's nothing standing in Kenneth Walker's way. I mean, he legitimately could be the highest fantasy riser in compared to last year to this year. I mean, running back 22, and I have him at 9. I mean, he potentially could be, and we'll get into our bold takes later, but it could be a little higher. Next guy we're going to talk about here at 10. Okay, so it's here 6 through 10 is going to be your elite running back 1 status. Okay, so this will wrap up our elite running back 1 status, in my opinion. Breece Hall at 10. Most of Hall's fantasy investors really had hoped that he was going to escape the Jets in free agency and land on a team with a vaguely functional offense. Right? Keep the running back with the non-exclusive franchise tag. Hall is clearly one of the running backs close to the top at the position, if not landing inside of it. Again, in my opinion, finished as running back 19 last season. And we've seen it for years now, how the Jets managed to undermine his abilities with team failure and workload meddling. I mean, I just don't understand most of the time. But the Jets had begun to take Hall for granted, in my opinion, and even seemingly scapegoated him for the team's broader offensive failures, raising talk of went to a committee with Braylon Allen, right? Allen remains a candidate to take short yardage carries, and thus the precious few gold line carries that Hall might otherwise see. So the limitations on Hall from previous years might persist to an extent. But the good news is that the Jets offense should be some amount better. 2026, bringing in new coordinator Frank Reich. As a Philly fan, it's not a disaster. It's a low bar to clear, and really still nothing is guaranteed, but got a new starting quarterback. It should be a meaningful upgrade with Geno Smith over Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor. I think that Geno Smith's arrival is great for Hall's PPR value in particular, because that plays that were incomplete passes or quarterback carries for Fields in 2025 might instead turn to targets for Hall, who is one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. As much as touchdowns might remain scarce, Hall's yardage and receptions totals should improve. Okay. Also, some little bit of credit here. I don't do it often, but their offensive line should be solid, if not legitimately good. So we have Breece Hall at number 10, and that wraps up our elite running back status. Now we will get into running back 2 high end, running back 2s. Okay. Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty is going to start that off at 11. Okay. He did finish at running back 11 last year. I think that a lot has to happen for I think that Mendoza, who works better for him? Mendoza, Kirk, he's got a quarterback change coming up. What does that do for his workload? You know what I mean? There's a lot of questions that surround the Raiders, but let's dig into this a little bit deeper. The Raiders' 2025 collapse and spectacular, failing memorably on the field while dysfunction ran rampant through team operations. Jeanty necessarily couldn't have stopped the implosion set in motion by Pete Carroll regimen. Any takeaways about Jeanty's abilities are probably best postponed until we see what he can do in a real NFL offense. And this is to my point. Much as there are no true guarantees, there is a sound basis to believe that the hiring of Clint Kubiak could necessarily do great things for Jeanty in 26. He goes from Kenneth Walker to Ashton Jeanty. Kubiak showed a unique insight as the offensive coordinator the last 2 years. Kubiak correctly sees the ground game, in my opinion, as the means of terms to the defense. He knows how to break down a defense, right? And he's able to break that down to his players, and I think it does wonders. So Jeanty's obviously got a loud talent that, explosive results right away with the right coaching. So in addition to Kubiak's rivals, Jeanty should benefit from an improved offensive line and, again, upgraded quarterback play of Geno Smith. They added Tyler Linderbaum, Spencer Bunford at left guard. That provides two important upgrades on the offensive line, which should also get a boost from the return of guy Colton Miller, who was lost to injury last year after a week 4 injury. So high hopes for Jeanty. I just think that it's going to take a year to crack that top 10, to be a year into Clint Kubiak's system, and just kind of get the feel for that, right? Next guy we're going to talk about is Josh Jacobs. Okay, I had him at 12. Now, given the hindsight of things and what might transpire with the domestic abuse, what might transpire with the 5 charges that he was arrested on, right? I'm avoiding Josh Jacobs. I shared Facebook, TikTok, YouTube on the platform. I'm avoiding Josh Jacobs completely right now. If you have not drafted yet, I would not be drafting Josh Jacobs because I do not see the situation panning out well at all. I just don't. The NFL kind of doesn't really, and rightfully so, but doesn't play around with the domestic abuse situations. If proven guilty and there's camera footage, however that is, you go back, you look at Ray Rice, you look at those kind of situations, and the NFL just doesn't play with that. So it's a big PR issue that they are not wanting to carry for you. So we won't talk too much about this because, again, I'm saying, but I do agree in the fact that he's a focal point. They can't stay healthy in the wide receiver department, and I arguably think he's the best player on their team. So we'll skip that one, go to 13, and I got Amarion Hampton. Okay, Amarion Hampton. Last season was challenging, in my opinion, for the Chargers offense, which really eventually imploded under the weight of offensive line injuries. That weight fell hard onto the backfield. Yet Hampton, I think, still demonstrated clear promise and major fantasy upside as a rookie, averaging 4.4 yards per carry and scoring 5 touchdowns in 9 games. So Hampton has all the tools to project as a high-volume workhorse, including as a pass catcher. He dominated at North Carolina, let's not forget, with back-to-back 1,500-yard rushing seasons, and then posted strong numbers, obviously at the game. So I think he's poised for a big year 2. Again, ankle injury caused him to miss 8 games last year. But, again, with a healthy full season, I think that he really could benefit and be in this top 12 realm. I think he's also getting the benefit of working in a revamped Chargers offense that should feature in a significantly improved offensive line and will be directed by new play caller Mike McDaniel. I think that's going to take Morion to other levels. So I do agree with this. Running back 35 ran into some injuries last year, so the ranking is not necessarily solid, but not a full year's work. But again, I think that with a full year's work, that top 12 is definitely available. Next guy we're going to get into is Derrick Henry. Okay, and we'll get into Derrick Henry a little bit later with our bold takes. But look, no player warrants the unicorn label more than Henry. Okay, whose entire background is full of details that aren't really supposed to be possible. 247 running backs aren't supposed to exist because humans that big aren't supposed to move the way that Henry does or age as gracefully as he has. Thanks to his, freakish anchor, Henry can be too tall for a running back, yet subject to none of the pitfalls that normally come with it. Tacklers who try to hit Henry high turn to dust, and the ones who try to hit him low turn out to be more than just speed. Okay, Henry, now 32, however, carries higher risk of falling off a cliff with each passing year. But there hasn't been much of a hint of a more gradual form of, physical decline. I don't think that's ever been the question. But last year, he once again averaged over 5 yards per carry on more than 300 attempts, closing out an up and down season, really, with 3 fumbles lost. But with a dominant December, kept the Baltimore Ravens in the playoff hunt, although he thrived. And again, we talked about this. I think from Tennessee to Baltimore, playing with Lamar definitely helped Derrick Henry. I think it should all Henry's fantasy value. If Jackson bounces back strong under the new offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle, new offensive line rookie, the Vega guard, Penn State got in there. Josh Simpson, they brought back from his second stint in Baltimore. I think if they are immediately step in and become competent starters, they can help make up for the free agency losses of Tyler Linderbaum and then Patrick Ricard. So I think the situation in Baltimore is still a good one overall. Especially for touchdown production. I just think that eventually this has to happen, right? I mean, I don't think Baltimore is going to be that team next year. I just don't think. I think there's better teams coming out of the AFC. Not taking anything from Henry. He's definitely draftable. I have him here at 14. But last year, like I said, back 8. So I just think it's just a small decline. I think you're going to start seeing it inch by inch. Great talent, great Hall of Fame, right? Eventually it has to happen, right? Kyren Williams. Okay. At 15. 2025 season for Kyren Williams was another highly successful one. Made it third straight year with at least 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns from scrimmage. Finished as the running back 9. They even finished 2025 with career highs for yards in scrimmage at 1,533, yards at 290, and receptions at 36. Okay, despite all this success, Williams' ADP is be at its lowest point in years after the emergence of Blake Corum. Okay, we'll talk about Blake Corum here in a little bit, but Corum averaged 10 carries and 1 target through week 7, from week 7 through the NFC Championship game, while Williams averaged 15 carries and 3 targets in that same stretch. Given that Corum averaged about 5.1 yards per carry on his 145 regular season, it's reasonable to assume he'll pick up right where he left off as one of the most heavily used running back twos in the league. So Williams has already shown that he can produce on a high-end running back two level with Corum regularly involved. Running back one territory is just tougher to ask for Kyrie Williams. Next guy we'll talk about who I think is going to have a decent year. Number 16, Quinshon Judkins. Okay. If Judkins comes back from an ankle surgery at full strength, he should be weekly starter. I think running back, I have him as a high-end running back too, but weekly starter in fantasy leagues, even if the Browns don't have much else going for them. Okay. First-year offense for Todd Monken. You got new wide receivers, you got new offensive line, a lot of new pieces that have to come together. Judkins last year suffered the season-ending right ankle injury in week 16. The broader struggles of the Cleveland offense landed hard on Judkins as the season wore on, but he outplayed his box score, in my opinion, and that box score wasn't even so bad. His 7 touchdowns and 3.6 yards per carry across 14 games represent acceptable production in the light of how dysfunctional the Browns were on offense. Okay, a lot of problems with the offense. You got, Shadur, you got Kevin Stefanski was last year. I think we all have to allow it to fall into place, right? Judkins is back. He's taken on 11 on 11 reps. He was participating in training drills, so the injury is no longer a concern. I think given a healthy year, new offensive line improvements, wide receivers, Shadur first full year, I think it could some great things. 17, I do have Bucky Irving. Okay. If the high points in Irving's 2024 rookie season were unsustainable, the low points in his challenging 25 season that involved instances of bad luck that are just unlikely to persist. But Irving was really productive in the second half, but based off of that, I don't think that he is suited for huge workloads long term. Okay. Unlike other sub 200 running backs like himself, James Cook, Kyron, Devon Achane, I think Irving in his way of running, interest in avoiding contact, right? Running with the fearlessness that he runs with opens up. He averaged 17 carries per game last season, similar to his list, but it might ultimately be better for the Buccaneers to being around a 15 carry back instead of trying to get him 20 totes per week. This is why they brought in the addition of Kenneth Gainwell in free agency to do that. Okay. With Gainwell, we'll talk a little bit about him, but he's an obvious threat to handle both change of pace carries and the passing down work. Okay. Irving did excel as a receiver, though. We don't want to take that away. 7.7 yards per touch, 87 career targets. So great. But Gainwell is able to do that in the game plan now. Now, the nightmare scenario for Irving fantasy value would be where Gainwell gets most of the targets and then number 3 back Sean Tucker, as we seen last year, kind of steals those short yardage touchdowns. He could find himself towards the back end of things. So not good, but that's why I have him as a running back too high end. Next guy we can talk about here is Jeremiah Love. Okay, I do have him a lot lower than everybody else. Location, location, location. I just think it's a bad situation, guys. I do. I think that the best talent on that team is by far Trey McBride. Marvin Harrison is earned the reps from that point. The quarterback situation is probably one of the worst in the league. You got Brissett or Carson Beck. You know, it's not a great situation. I mean, if he would have went to Tennessee, I could see him being a top 15, top 12 running back. It's not going to happen, guys. I think the volume is there, but I mean, again, how much do you expect him to take from Trey McBride, from Marvin Harris? I'm not necessarily sure that I think he's going to take a lot from these guys. Okay. Love's 2026 projection involves a range of outcomes greater than most. Okay, that's why he's middle of the pack in his ADP range. Third overall pick. We understand that. I think he's an elite talent. Guys, I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I'm saying this. I can't be biased here. I think that he faces fantasy pitfalls of a rookie fantasy running back. I think that, you know, he might not, he's not going to be a 300 carry back in the NFL. Similarly, he was not a true workhorse at Notre Dame when he was there because Jadarian Price's success off the bench allowed the Fighting Irish to limit Love to 199 and 163 in carries the past two seasons. Okay, given Love's high center of gravity, it would be reasonable if the Cardinals spared him the most punishing carries, including some of the short yardage situations, which is why I think they have Tyler Algier. So you kind of look at it, you're a rookie running back, you haven't gotten into where you need to be in the offense. But I think that Tyler Algier also is going to eat on carries, which is going to be his touchdowns. They brought in Tyler Algier for a reason, guys. We can't forget that. Scattaboo. Again, barring injury, guys, I think that you know, Cam Scatterbo given a full season, we could see him as a top 8. 37 was last year again. He was one of the most pleasant surprises early in the 2025 season. I think that he established himself fantasy workhorses by the end of September, showing off the power and the high level in receiving production. He is one of the most sickening moments that I remember from last season when the gruesome dislocated ankle and right after he logged 6 straight games with double-digit fantasy points in half PPR scoring, so even more PPR. If he can return 100%, like I said, from the ankle injury, there's no obvious reason why he would pick up where he left off. Scattaboo's elusiveness and pass-catching ability make him a 3-down fit for really any offense. I don't think that Tyrone Tracy or anything will workload unless injuries happen, but they improve the offensive line. Second-year dart. I think it's a decent situation when given 100%. So next is Javonte Williams. I do like the signing here, okay, guys? I do like that he went back to Dallas, finished as running back 12 last year. And the reason why I think there's a little bit of a dip here, I think that they turn into more of a passing offense, right? CD, Pickens, Flournoy. I just think that they have, when they lost on the offensive line, I think they bode well. I think Dak Prescott, as we know, is a passing quarterback. Javonte is definitely there to alleviate that, guys. I'm not saying that he's not going to be a part of the situation. 11 touchdowns. Let's see. stats pulled down somewhere. Didn't have only had 200 games last year, guys. Week 5 against the Jets and week 7 at home against Washington. So he's not really doing this against top tier talent. Receiving stats is subpar. He had some really good games, 5 catches, 6 catches. Again, I just think that the balance, CeeDee Lamb, Pickens, Jake Ferguson maybe on a redemption year, just Dak Prescott leading that offense, kind of just Javonte Williams on that back burner necessarily. Not that they won't use him, just that he's on that back burner. Next, we're going to talk about Darian Price. Okay, and we're talking about the first Seahawk running back here in Jadarian Price. And again, rookie, right? I think although he was one of the more surprising picks in the first round, it's an outcome that wasn't entirely out of nowhere, right? This is the same Seattle organization that spent a second-round pick on Charbonnet when Kenneth Walker was already a capable starter. So when Walker now gone and Charbonnet recovering from an ACL tear, okay, it makes sense to target Price with the 32nd overall pick. Price doesn't quite have the prototypical build for a starting running back in the NFL, nor does he offer the elite speed as he ran almost a 5.40, or really high-end college production. Again, he was behind Jeremiah Love. The later part of that can be easily excused given that Jeremiah Love, again, was the guy blocking him from his snaps at Notre Dame. But Price's just the size speed is perhaps a bigger concern for me. Okay, as an off-the-bench player, Price was consistently explosive as a runner, 6 yards per carry, 21 touchdowns on 280 carries. Lethal as a kick returner, as 3 touchdowns on only 22 returns. Okay, with Charbonnet likely to miss at least a chunk of the season after the February surgery there's a wide open opportunity for Price to really quickly emerge as the lead runner early in the season. Now, obviously, when Charbonnet comes back, I feel like he's earned that right. He's earned that spot. I feel like if Jadarian Price can take this and run with it, and the Seahawks are pretty in the NFC, this could be bad news for wrong place, wrong time. So, next guy we're going to talk about, the new addition out of New Orleans, Travis Etienne. I think this will add some firepower for the Tyler Shuck offense and Kellen Moore. But obviously Etienne left Jacksonville this last year for New Orleans in free agency, following really a more of an up and down year, but mostly impressive 5 years with the Jags, okay? By most accounts, Etienne's exit from Jacksonville was more about money. It was more, it sounds like, than any specific desire to replace him. The former teammate of Trevor Lawrence and Clemson star was Jacksonville's really main engine in 2025, turning in 260 carries at 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns while catching 36 of 52 targets for 292 yards and 6 touchdowns. So Etienne has just enough mass to project as a workhorse, but I think he wins with the vision and agility rather than power. And he doesn't have a track record of durability. Okay, this is where it kind of leads into the question, right? I do think that he has a great situation in New Orleans. I think, with Kamara hopefully reportedly hoping to play another season for the Saints. But I think that he'd likely be returning as just a backup specialist, not as the 1B to ETN's 1A. So if ETN is peeling off 40-yard carries, scoring touchdowns and catching passes, he could push for the top 12 at his position. But we'll see what the Saints offense definitely looks like in this next season. So next guy we'll talk about, another new addition But David Montgomery, took his talents to Houston. I think he was overqualified as the running back 2 in Detroit. And understandably yearned for more of a feature back role as he was behind Gibbs over there. But even though particularly, Gibbs' talent level, but Montgomery's at least an average starting running back. Okay, and one who's able to stay on the field, all downs and situations. Now, new teammate Woody Marks is a candidate for the passing down work, but that's mostly just because Montgomery needs to come off the field at some point, in my opinion. He's proven himself repeatedly as both a blocker and pass catcher. In terms of running ability, well, there's really no comparison at all. Neither is likely to run away from defensive backs, but at least the 230-pound Montgomery can run people over, punish the defense with power running at volume. So I think this gives C.J. Stroud just another weapon, just another reliable thing. Durability has been a big thing for David Montgomery. So we'll see where that goes. At number 22, DeAndre Swift for Chicago. Okay. They don't really draw up two-headed monsters in the backfields to look like the ones that the Bears have anymore. Okay, so this is why I kind of have him and Monangai a little bit lower, because I think they're both going to eat into each other. With Swift and Kyle Monangai, not as so much a thunder situation as much as as something as like a kick drum and lightning dynamic. But neither player runs with much power. At least Swift is convincing as the lightning component, making him the more interesting of the two due to the superior big play and pass catching ability. But perhaps Swift has his limitations. Okay, he's more athletic than truly elusive and doesn't break many tackles. Does have a small burst that still shows up when he has space to work with. He also deserves credit for improving his game between the tackles in Philadelphia and now Chicago. After facing toughness criticisms in Detroit at the beginning of his career, I think the Bears' offensive line should be solid, if not quite good, in 2026. And Swift has already demonstrated his ability to produce, even if Caleb Williams never turns a corner in his development, which, again, we've already talked about. I think he does. Okay, if Coach Ben Johnson can get Williams to take the next step, I do think this helps Swift and Monangai in their scoring opportunities. Now, Monangai will remain involved as a rushing specialist and closer when the Bears are winning, but Swift has and earned and will continue to be the one who does go down to get more Chicago points in the first place. Okay, Swift should continue to hover around that running back 2 range, or at least high-end flex ability. Okay, our next guy that we're going to talk about, Tony Pollard. Okay, Tony Pollard, where is he on my list here? I do think that he is splitting with Tyjae Spears, but I just have a good feeling. I have a good feeling about Tony Pollard this year. For a guy who played wideout in college, Pollard has taken on a brutal workload in the recent years. Okay, I think that getting Carnell Tate inside this offense is going to help alleviate this. Okay, his carry counts in Tennessee's might not look too substantial at a glance, but he was always supposed to be more of a big play specialist than a workhorse between the tackles. Tyjae Spears has a concerning injury history and plenty of pass catching ability in his own right. But Tennessee understandably spared Spears' rushing ability and rushing usage, and more or less placed the difference on Pollard when Spears was hurt. So I think if Spears can retain healthy, the addition of Carnell Tate, I think that Pollard could sneak up in there in the 23 range, which is what he finished at last year. Okay, next guy we can talk about here is going to be Ramondre Stevenson at 24. Okay, Ramondre Stevenson had struggles with fumbles for most of his career. It is probably luckily he didn't land on the bench last season after dropping the ball twice in week 3 and a third time in week 5. Okay, I'm kind of splitting this spot between Henderson and Stevenson because I still don't know what this looks like. I thought that Trayvon Henderson last year with given the opportunities, but for some reason down the stretch, it just seemed like he just was put on the back burner too much for Stevenson. So I'm kind of splitting the fact until it remains unseen, right? I have to see the facts. I have to see this pan out because, I mean, Stevenson did eat into Henderson's time last year. We will say that. So another guy we could talk about, another backup, Blake Corum at 25. We said we were talking about him last couple people ago. In my opinion, Corum's rookie season is well in the rearview mirror for him. I think that especially in the passing situations, he's become a threat. Now, that's not to say that Corum can't be a 3-down starter in his own right, as he did as much as in Michigan. But if Williams were to miss that time, that's definitely the role he would take. Both are healthy, though. Williams still seems to have the complete trust of Coach Sean McVay. He does ask his running backs to do a lot of pass blocking, which Williams is better at. Okay. Even though Williams is the more complete real-life player of the two, I think Corum might provide super production at both per snap and overall if he had a sustained run in the lead role. Okay. Now, though neither big nor fast by any NFL standards, Corum is likely around 10 pounds heavier than, but is also slightly faster. Okay, making him the more explosive and powerful out of the two. In the meantime, even if Williams stays healthy all year, Corum should offer a bit of a standalone fantasy value as a fill-in starter for bye weeks and or injuries become a factor. All right. Going down the list here, we're going to talk about, I think, this guy for Carolina. I think that again, I think I kind of have it to where, Dowdle left. Jonathan Brooks can't necessarily stay healthy. Trevor Etienne, is that really worked out? A.J. Dillon they signed. Is that really going to be a thing? I think Chuba Hubbard, as of last year, really came on strong. In your rank 3 in week 1, 8 in the wild card was 3rd. I apologize. That was here on Sleeper it says 8 and 10 was his first 2 weeks. And then as you notice, he just kind of falls off till week 12, where week 13 against the Rams has the 5th highest stat for that week. So, finished as a running back 39, missed a couple games early in the season, week 5, week 6 with some stingers. Nothing too serious though. Again, I just think that he's the best running back out of that room, the proven guy. Carolina brought in Bryce Young some help. What does this offense look like now? I think that Chuba Hubbard should have a little bit less weight off his shoulders. Next guy we'll talk about is going to be R.J. Harvey. Okay? R.J. Harvey. I think that he, again, is a sleep side for his rookie year. Really had a slow start and really caught fire at the end. Had 3 top 12 performances up till week 9, and then week 13, 14, 16, and 17 in that 5-week span had 4 top 12 finishes. So really caught fire at the end there with the divisional play, which could be very promising in the start of this year. Now, They drafted Jonah Coleman. I'm not so sure that's going to bite into RJ Harvey. I think that's more of so in case J.K. Dobbins goes down and is unhealthy again. We'll see how that goes. So I do have R.J. Harvey there, though. I'm just making sure that I didn't miss anybody here. Byshel Tootin. So Byshel Tootin, I think he's in that sleeper upside too as well. We'll see what he does in Jacksonville. I think that he's definitely the lead guy with Travis Etienne out in Jacksonville. They brought in Chris Rodriguez to kind of help him out, but other than that, I mean, the running back room is very scarce. I think Tootin definitely has an opportunity to step up here and be that guy. Next group I have kind of separated is kind of the Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle team, and along with Caleb Johnson, right? Caleb Johnson, has he earned that route over Jalen Warren? Not in my opinion. They bring in Rico Dowdle. What does that mean for him? But I think that Jalen Warren out of these guys are going to be the better fantasy production running back for Pittsburgh. I think that Rico Dowdle could have a few good games as we saw in Carolina last year. But, for me, I just think that it's just too big of a committee for me to say otherwise. Number 30, I did have Kenneth Gainwell at there. Again, we talked about him a little bit. I think just the pass catching ability could be a big thing for him in the Tampa Bay offense. And then also, let's not forget about JCM for Washington. We talked about Katron Allen a little bit. I have him ranked toward the bottom because of that. I think that the Rashad White, Katron Allen situation could definitely not bode well for JCM. So I'll kind of wrap up our rankings there. And now we're going to go into our bold takes here. Our first one. Okay, a little bit bold here, a little bit bold. However, I do like what Clint Kubiak has done for Kenneth Walker in Seattle. Now, if he can translate that with a much improved offensive line with injuries and signings in the Raider organization, the Ashton Jeanty taking his last year's rookie performance and finishing this year as a top 3 fantasy running back. Okay, the rookie hype really reality, right? I mean, he finished with 17. I think he finishes this year with 1,700 scrimmage yards, and I think becomes Dynasty's running back 1 by the season's end. I mean, we talk about Bijan, we talk about Gibbs, right? When they were at their prime, Bijan's still in his prime, and so is Gibbs. But I'm saying when they were that young, we knew if we were starting up a dynasty league, that was the way to go. That's how I'm viewing Jeanty. After this year, if you are starting up a league, I think Jeanty is up there with those running backs because of age and because of talent. Number 2, I'm gonna say it. Kenneth Walker, we had at number 9. Bold prediction would be Walker finishes as the running back 1 overall in Kansas City. Okay, I am a big Andy Reid guy. Obviously, Phillies are Philadelphia for days. Andy Reid, I think, will unlock Kenneth Walker's full potential like he did LaShawn McCoy in a massive way. Double-digit touchdowns, receiving usage, I think really pushes him past, could push him past Bijan and Gibbs for that running back 1 spot. So that's number 2. Number 3, after a full healthy season last year, and I know he's bold for a lot of you because he is injury, but can we say that anymore? I mean, again, he had a full healthy year and finished as the running back 1 last year. But I think that CMC will at least miss 6 games next year. I think the production stays elite as we have it in number 4. I think it stays elite when active. But I think the mileage finally catches up, and the fantasy managers are frustrated again during the playoff season. Number 4, I think Cam Scatterbo can become this year's league-winning rookie. Not necessarily rookie, but like new to fantasy. Not rookie in the NFL. I don't think anybody drafts him high enough. But I think realistically, in this next season, by November, he could be locked in as a running back 2, putting up monster touchdown numbers. I mean, they have Malik Neighbors, and they didn't draft one because they got Manungai. I couldn't tell you. I think Cam Scatterbo is going to be a big part of that Giants offense next year. Breece Hall is number 5. Breece Hall leads all running backs in receptions. If you are in a PPR league, my bold prediction is that Breece Hall might take you to the championship. Okay, my bold prediction is that the Jets lean fully into Breece Hall as the receiving weapon as they should. He catches 80-plus balls this season and returns to an elite fantasy status, and we have him at number 10. The 6th bold take, Gibbs. As the running back 2, we have him as, could he score 20 total touchdowns? Okay, in my opinion, this is a really bold take, but Detroit's offense stays elite, and Gibbs becomes nearly impossible to stop in space. We know that to be true, right? But I think if they lean on him just that much more, depending on how much they use Pachenko, but Gibbs really could produce those numbers. Number 7, we kind of talked about this a little bit. Derrick Henry finally falls out of the top 15 in running backs. I had him at number 14, but it could happen. Okay, the age cliff hits hard. Touchdowns keep him usable. But I think the efficiency drops significantly. Okay, Hall of Famer, but time is a bad word. Number 8, the last bold take for the night. I think that Javonte Williams becomes a top 10 fantasy running back in Dallas. Could happen. I could be completely wrong about my passing, my take, right? He produced last year. Why not? Why not lean on him again? Okay, they could feed him heavy during the goal line, and if he quietly becomes one of the best fantasy draft values at ADP, that's where the ADP matters. If you draft him and he outperforms that, well, you might just be doing your job. So I appreciate everybody joining in tonight and sticking around for the longevity of it. Next week, we will be covering the wide receiver department of it. Not sure how many we're going to cover, maybe 30, maybe 40. We might extend it out a little bit, just go a little bit quicker. But again, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Get you tuning into the chat as well. And I hope you guys have a blessed week. And we will see you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Again, drop a subscribe, drop a follow. It's completely free. And then go over there at the Sports Lounge Media as well. And we appreciate you guys and have a great week. Thank you.